Welcome to another live stream, everyone. Please do me a favor. As always, let me know if you can see the charts clearly and you can hear me all right. Hopefully, you're all having a fantastic day so far, regardless of what the price of crypto is doing. Smash that thumbs up if you're feeling good either way. Thumbs up if you're happy to look at some charts right now, and thumbs up if you appreciate these level-headed live streams coming at you. And with that, let's hop right into it, you guys. Well, guys, I mean, the market has been seeing a bit of a correction the last few days. Honestly, not too surprising. Yeah, it's a little disappointing when we want to see things just go absolutely parabolic and just go into a blue sky breakout. Unfortunately, the market doesn't always care what we want or how we feel. I'm actually disappointed with myself because those of you who were here with me in my last stream on Thursday, you know that I took basically an absolutely perfect short right at the top, right at the all-time high swing fail. But like a total noob, I let my emotions of all-time highs get the best of me, and I did not leave enough wiggle room on my stop to fill the 115 swing fail, liquidity grab pocket, whatever you want to call it. Basically looking at something like this for the resistance, right? We never did break above that 115, above 125,000 US dollars. But as I mentioned, I kind of screwed that up. So the idea was bang on, you guys, but I screwed up the execution a little bit, unfortunately, which is actually the most important part. So hopefully if any of you guys ended up looking for something similar, hopefully you didn't make the same mistake I did, but that's in the past. Let's discuss whether or not it's time to worry at this point with Bitcoin showing a little bit of weakness at all-time highs or not, right? So let's actually start here on the 4-hour today. Those of you who were with me on the last stream last week or happen to be in my Telegram group, it shouldn't come too much of a surprise that we dropped to where we did, to this purple box here. It's not that I necessarily thought we had to come down to this level, but for those of you who have been following along, you'll know that we were ready for this support as a buy level rather than being the people panic shorting late right into support, which a lot of people I'm sure are doing and will continue to do, right? So as far as panic goes, nothing looks all that bad to me at this point. Yeah, we've seen, how far did we end up correcting with that swing fail? We dropped about 8% for Bitcoin. So a fairly significant dump. But you guys, this, as I keep saying, this wasn't all too unexpected. Yeah, I wasn't all that interested in shorting other than the one that I tried. And like I said earlier, I failed that one, unfortunately, even though the idea was there. But other than that, not overly interested in shorting this market still, even though I saw potential for a deeper correction. But I was warning before we even got this swing fail here, looking at either the 4-hour or even the weekly, guys, I was saying that basically if we set a higher high at all, at that point, that brings our higher low on the trend significantly higher. And that's exactly what happened, right? We ended up breaking the all-time high just a little bit, just a wick. So we get a bit of a swing fail. It makes sense that we test back into support of the range, right? We failed at breaking through, breaking out of resistance through into a new range. So it makes sense that we go and retest the range that we are currently trading in. And we see that on the weekly here. Basically, we had our high, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. So we brought that up drastically. And I was saying earlier last week that basically if we set a new high like this, that I wouldn't be too surprised to see us end up pulling back, or not even that I was expecting it, but if we did see a pullback, that it would still be a very healthy trend because we do just have higher support at this point. And again, you can see it on the weekly chart here, and it also lines up with the 4-hour. Right? We had our high, we have a higher high, and my higher low, my confirmed higher low on the trend is the lowest point between those two, which is just below 112K. I was talking about this level for, through 3 or 4 videos last week, 3 or 4 streams. I was talking about this level last week for this exact reason. So notice that we have the fib here. We have my purple box here. Where did we end up testing to? Basically the 786 perfectly, right? That should come as no surprise to those of you who are familiar with my live streams, especially those of you in my Telegram chat where I'm constantly posting examples of STUBER fibs and that sort of thing. This was nothing crazy in the price action. This was just, the thing is, yeah, it feels a little bit crazy because it was on a 4-hour and a weekly chart, so it was obviously a big range. But if this was a 5-minute chart, I wouldn't have been looking for longs up here into resistance, right? I would have been looking for that break of structure followed by a pullback. I don't take long positions unless I get that, especially STUBER fibs specifically. That, you guys know, that is one of my favorite strategies, right? I look for a structure break followed by that pullback. That's the whole point of the STUBER fib strategy. So to see it, yeah, I normally trade it on the 1 minute or the 5 minute, more so the 5 minute. But to see it on the 1 hour or the 4 hour or the weekly like this, I mean, it's still structure is structure, no matter how you look at it, right? So I was mentioning, looking for that support, getting closer to 114K. It's actually about 114.5K would be, well, actually 0.6 approximately, would be the 786 basically. So I got one of my entries on a long position there. Being that it's the 4 hour, I'm already not willing to take a loss on that position. Basically, on the lower time frames, if we get a sell signal on the MDX Trendmaster indicator, I'm going to close at least, well, I've already closed a quarter of it. I would close at least another quarter and stop losses break even. But at this point, that's basically the reason I was watching this level. So at this point, we got to ask ourselves, is that it? Is Bitcoin safe at this point? It's honestly hard to say at this point. I love that we got that initial reaction off that. I can't help but feel like if we round over, I really can't help but feel that we would dig a little deeper into support, maybe testing the 886, for example, or realistically, maybe even the swing fail zone down here, right? Do the opposite of what we did up here, where we'd break just slightly below the lows, but then end up reclaiming that level. That would be a beautiful long opportunity, right? And this time I'm not going to screw up my stop loss, and I am going to leave that wiggle room if I get into that kind of a position. So at this point, I'm actually going to set an alert to go every minute for Bitcoin. Just looking for a bit of a swing fail. If we end up testing the very bottom, that swing fail double bottom territory level, if we get some sort of a reaction off this level, but we're holding above the 115, I'm going to be looking at laddering in some long positions down there again. But we'll see if I end up getting that or not. So as it stands right now, it's hard to say what we're going to do. I'm going to have to check out some shorter time frames, which I'll obviously do in a little bit here. But this structure here, actually last night in the Telegram, I was mentioning this structure. I did end up taking a little bit of a scalp long off something like this. It would have been on the shorter time frames, but that's the fib I would have had mapped out. I'll show it on the shorter time frames later. It basically, I laddered into my position. I got my average entry around 116.7K. So I laddered in at the 786, 886, the 1, and the 115. Brought my average entry down close to double bottom territory here. And from there, it got stopped out. So it was a very small loss. I mean, Bitcoin dropped. As soon as we dropped 116.4K, I said, okay, if that drops, basically that setup is invalidated. And at that point, I think that we're going right back down to this support, basically. And yeah, just to show it here, basically, I was showing this structure here, right? When we had our little consolidation on the 4 hour, we did technically still have low, lower low with a confirmed lower high. And the fact that we had not broke that trend yet, I was still open to the possibility that we end up pulling back a little bit further to the bigger support that I had been mentioning, right? So eventually we did end up pulling to that 786, got a little reaction. And this is basically where we're at right now, right? About 116.5, 0.6, somewhere in there. Yeah, 116.7 almost. So yeah, realistically, even though a lot of people are probably upset by the price action, don't get me wrong, I would have loved to just go straight parabolic as well, just like the next guy. But nothing crazy happened in the charts. As far as market structure goes, especially if you're a swing trader, I mean, this should be the setup that you were looking for if you were a swing trader. A lot of people think it's degenerate to trade on the 5 minute and the 1 minute and stuff like that. And they consider themselves not degenerate because they consider themselves swing traders because they look at the 4 hour or whatever. But let's put it this way. If you're shorting into support, I mean, you're looking at something very risky. We all know you're supposed to, in general, you want to buy low, sell high. You want to buy support, sell resistance. Yet when it comes time, when it actually comes time and we start dumping like this, everyone gets very scared at support. And I bet you more people were shorting this level than trying to long it like I was, right? So that's the importance of looking ahead sometimes, you guys. It's not that I knew, when we were up here, and even when I was swinging at that swing fail short there, it's not that I knew we were coming back down to this level, but I had this mapped out as a potential setup that if we come back down here, the fact that we've set a higher high, I'm actually going to delete this line here. It's just really bugging me here. Just because for horizontal levels, it's easier to look at like so. But basically we got our swing fail there, right? So it's not so much that I was looking at this swing fail as we have to go back down to this level. It's just planning ahead for if we come down to this level, just to understand why that's happening. And why it's happening is just because it's typical market structure. We set a new higher high and we're pulling back to retest support of the range. There's nothing scary, nothing crazy, nothing all too alarming with that happening, in my opinion. I think that this still looks very good from an overall trend perspective, right? That being said, if we do end up getting a bounce, I mean, something that I think would be it would be honestly a little bit painful. It would destroy a lot of people's confidence. It would ruin people's emotions. But if we had something like that, right, the line that I actually just deleted, but understand that it's very possible if we end up seeing some sort of a bounce, we could just do the same thing where we get slightly higher than that high, right? We could even get a third touch of a perfect resistance line like that and then end up nuking. And boy, would that ever throw a lot of people for a loop. Not saying that has to happen at this point. What I would love to see is get a third touch point followed by, by actually breaking it and flipping that resistance into support. We do that. That's a huge green light for me. I would be mega bullish once again on a breakout with that sort of a thing. But we do have to watch for that swing fail again if we do get back up to this resistance level once again. Just again, it's not that I'm saying that's going to happen right away by any means. That's just one of those things of being ready for it if and when it actually shows up, right? So as it stands right now, yeah, that's what I'm seeing on the 4 hour. I want to bring up the trend master. So notice we do have a sell signal. It's a slightly higher sell signal. So that is another little bit of confluence that I love using when looking for STUBER fib setups, right? Is that I often bring up this MDX trend master indicator to see which direction things are moving. And obviously we have a significantly higher sell and a slightly higher sell. Here we have a significantly higher buy signal. And where this buy signal came in, that means that this would have been our most recent pivot, right? So that's what I like to use as confluence. It's not so much that I take every sell signal and every buy signal as its own sign on its, well, getting tongue-tied here, but not its own signal on its own. But when I can combine those things and I'm looking for fibs and we have the structure for this fib, right? Because we have the high and the higher high, that makes this my higher low. We have the higher sell signals here, meaning that's the lowest point between the two. There's just a lot of confluence adding up to that point. And again, just why I was looking at that as a strong support level potentially as we end up coming down to it. So far, it's not like this bounce was all too unexpected. I wouldn't have been too surprised to see it drop a little bit lower to the 886, which would have been closer to 113,000. But we basically tested the 786 and just went straight up from there pretty much. I mean, you can see on the 5 minute here just how close that was and how accurate that was. So I was just front running my fib a little bit with that order. And it was just one of my smaller ones anyways, because I like to ladder in heavier as we get closer to my invalidation. But since it took off like this, I canceled my other orders from now, and I want to see what the price actually does if we get down to those levels, since we already got the immediate reaction, basically. If I pull up that fib, as far as a STUBER fib goes, my first target, if this is going to play out, would be approximately 118.1 thousand US dollars. The 214 target would be closer to 121.8 thousand US dollars. And then obviously all-time highs would be back above 124.5 thousand US dollars, basically. But as it stands right now, I think this chart structure still looks good. Yeah, it's worth noting that, hey, we obviously failed the highs, right? We got a swing fail. We got this little liquidity grab, whatever. But again, it may have already played out before because we failed the top side of the range. So now we're just coming down towards the lower side of the range to retest it, basically. So we'll have to see what happens with that. On the 5-minute, we still have this buy signal on the MDX Trendmaster holding as support. It is obviously a significant lower buy signal since we, again, using this this indicator for this type of thing, you guys, right, is right here. We had the higher trending sell signals. We got this sell signal, actually even back here, sell signal, higher sell, higher sell, higher sell. Just like here, we had a buy signal and a higher buy signal. As soon as we ended up losing that level, as soon as we lost that higher buy signal trend, basically, let's just say this is our pivot right here, right? As soon as we lost that, I mean, it was straight Nuketown. So again, just a way that you can use those signals on the MDX Trendmaster to point out that there could be a shift of trend happening. If you're in a position the opposite way, to start taking profits, reduce your risk, remove your risk, whatever you got to do. Or if you're looking for that confluence to take a trade you're already looking at for the downside, then that very much played out beautifully. Even further confirmation, right? We got our lower buy signal followed by a much lower sell signal. And again, when those sell signals rounded over and switched directions, it was a strong sign that we were going to go for that little dump there. So again, this buy signal on its own, not that I want to take it all too serious, but obviously it played out anyways already. It's got a very nice move off it. So I would say it was very much a success. But just understand that it does not have to blast us right to new all-time highs or anything like that. We'll just have to see what happens. What I'd be watching for right now, first of all, let's go just structure. Let's take Trendmaster off. I'm just looking at very basic structure, much like what I was looking at on Bitcoin earlier on the larger time frames, right? Is on the 5-minute, we basically did the same thing, right? We had this high, we have a higher high. This would be the lowest point between the two at about 115.9 thousand US dollars. So that's where I currently have this fib. Now, this is obviously more of a scalp, right? Because it's on the 5-minute, but this is kind of the type of setup that I'd be interested in looking for, right? Laddering it at the 786, the 886, the 1, and closer to the 115, just trying to really bring that average entry down a little bit to make that loss significantly smaller rather than just going all in on a position at the 786. I like to ladder in and bring my average entry closer to that invalidation. It also means that when you get something like this morning, what happened where it hits the 786 and blasts off right from there, yeah, unfortunately, you end up with a smaller position than you were intending sometimes, but at least you're still protecting yourself. And if you take that loss, it's not going to be so devastating, right? So that's kind of what I'd be looking at for now. The 786 currently at about 116.1. The 886 at about 116, and then swing fail zone right down to basically if we, this would be invalidated if we drop below 115.7 thousand US dollars. Basically, I would give up on that scalp continuation play kind of a thing on the 5-minute there. So yeah, guys, like I said, with Bitcoin on the 4-hour, on the weekly, all of that, you guys, it's nothing different than this setup on the 5-minute. And obviously it does not have to play out perfectly. We do not have to do one of these where we test that pocket and go straight to the moon. Doesn't need to happen that way. But as far as a typical STUBER setup, that's the type of structure I'm looking at on a 5-minute setup. It's the same as I look at on the 4-hourly setup, and we have the exact same setup on the weekly. So just kind of goes to show you that all charts typically like to do the same kind of structure, right? And that's why I know I mentioned this once in a while that I sometimes have a bad habit of not mentioning the actual price of these levels and the price on the side here. That's because structure is so much more important than numbers, because when people start looking at numbers, they just draw their own conclusions, what makes sense and what doesn't. And that's not how trading works. So the structure is so much more important than whatever the actual numbers are. Yeah, there's some truth to, big round numbers get respected and stuff from a psychological point of view. But when you just start saying, oh no, the price can't hit that level, it's not going to hit that level again. just because you don't think it can go that low, for example, or that high. That's just not necessarily how charts work. So that's why I have a hard time looking at the numbers all the time, because I more so look at the structure. And if I'm looking at setting an entry at that point, I look at what the numbers are so I can type them in basically. But as far as the 5-minute goes, that's kind of the setup that I'm looking for on Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin dominance, that's another one. You guys know I love pointing this out because I still am more interested in trading Ethereum and Solana than Bitcoin. I'm not in a trade on either of those right now, just while the market kind of susses out what it's planning on doing here. But when the market starts trending in a healthy way and it starts looking more bullish to me again, I'm going to start looking at those more aggressively again. And especially, I want to see what Bitcoin dominance does here, because obviously I've been talking about this one for quite a while. It was on the 4-hour basically, but this uptrend that when we broke that, we just absolutely started nuking. Since that, we have actually tested a much larger trend line, and we are currently trying to flip that support into resistance. Now, if that happens, that's actually very good for the market, right? I know that looks like a bearish chart. Most of you here with me probably already understand this, but if the Bitcoin dominance is dropping, and especially if the price is still hanging on, and it's not like people are panic selling out of Bitcoin, it's just that Bitcoin is able to hold its price while near all-time highs, while the market doesn't even really care about it all that much anymore, right? It's just showing that if Bitcoin dominance is dropping and the price is still climbing or consolidating, it's holding strong without even trying, right? So we would love to see that, and I would love to see this absolutely dump off a cliff. If we zoom out to the weekly, I mean, obviously it doesn't have to happen, but it looks like it could very well be a thing, right? We're losing an important trend line there. We already lost one there. If we're just looking for resistance from a horizontal point of view, I mean, we tested the 786 on a very long time frame here. This is a weekly, so this pull is actually from 2020. So that's basically 4.5 to 5 years of data right here. So the fact that we got up to macro resistance on that, and see us get that rejection, I mean, that would be so good for the market if that keeps dumping off a cliff. I think that would be so good for the altcoins. With that being said, let me just catch up on the chat a little bit. You guys, if you do appreciate these live streams, you appreciate going at this with a level head, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I will catch up on the chat here. And then I do want to take a look at a couple of altcoins, you know, take a look at Ethereum and the other big ones. So that being said, Adrian, wake up the Canadian bear. He's still hibernating, but you know, he's hearing the odd thing, you know, he's sniffing the odd smell. So, you know, he's starting to come to. But no, I'm still not bearish. I'm open to the idea of these pullbacks, but just looking at where we found support so far, it still looks like the charts are, you know, respecting a nice uptrend. That's basically all there is to it at this point. Stu, do you have a strategy to trade shit coins? I have a couple, basically the same as I do with trading leverage, right? I mean, I'm not a huge fundamental guy. I don't really follow super closely with which communities are doing what projects are building, that sort of thing. I have a handful that I do follow a little bit. But for the most part, trading shit coins, I basically do the same thing, right? I pull Fibonacci's. I still look for my STUBER fib setups. I still use the MDX Trendmaster to see which way those signals are trending. A perfect example is Troll. I mean, Troll is one that I was talking about this, I think a couple of months ago on some of my streams. Basically same thing, right? Back here, we had this structure break. We end up coming back. I was talking about buying Troll in this STUBER fib here, just over a cent. And it ended up eventually just taking off. And that's obviously not typical of every STUBER fib setup out there. There's a lot of factors involved there. But that was just looking at basic market structure and just looking at buying support rather than buying resistance, right? So many people, especially with meme coins and low cap coins, as they're pumping, it's fun to chase the pump, and everyone thinks that they're never going to come back down, right? So On something like this, it was just, hey, this is at a support level, and basically took off. Another thing that was going for this, just a couple other strategies, like I said, with the MDX Trend Master, pointing out which way these signals are trending. Right. So here we had a higher buy signal, but we never had higher trending sell signals yet. Just like right here, we got a lower sell signal, but we never had a lower buy signal yet. And then, so here we're getting conflicting stories, but it's right here where it actually changed, right? We got our higher sell signal followed by a higher buy signal on the Trend Master. And I mean, the Trend Master is obviously a trending tool, right? And just the way I use it, looking for which way it's, suggesting, the buy levels are getting higher, showing where the trend is going. That, again, that was just added confluence to the STUBER fib setup, that we were at support and buying pressure was stepping in earlier, basically. So that was a huge sign there as well. I think on the daily, did it ever print one? Never did print one. It got above it on the daily. But as far as a breakout strategy on the daily, I was actually talking about this one too, is with the Bollinger Bands, is that basically they, we got this little squeeze here, and the Bollinger Bands just absolutely spread right apart, right? They just exploded apart, suggesting that there was some serious incoming volatility. And the fact that we closed a daily candle above that band just showed that we were breaking out, and we were taking the top side of that band, basically. So at this point, yeah, they're starting to close up together again. So it might take some time, some consolidation before it ends up getting that kind of a consolidation and that kind of a breakout on the band as well. I was talking about the same thing on Ethereum last week, is we had a nice Bollinger Band breakout just like that. The weekly, I can't remember if this one has one or not. I know Ethereum does. No, not on Troll here. But yeah, the daily, the 4 hour, they both had that. So definitely a few things lining up with something like that. Same with IQ, for example. We got the higher trending buy signal right around the 786 support here. Because same thing, right? I mean, this coin, guys, I understand not everybody wants to trade shit coins. Not everybody's into meme coins or low cap coins. This one right here has about a $4 million market cap, right? So it's actually a tiny project on the grand scheme of things. But still, look at that. We pull from our lows to, pull from our highs there. Look, we ended up stopping in that 786, 886 fib pocket. Can pull it further, same thing, end up hitting the 786 there. But even going to the top of the range here, notice where my purple box is. That's where we ended up pulling back to. So same thing, right? Even though that's a strategy I more so came up with for trading Bitcoin with leverage, I still see it happen all the time on, even micro cap coins like this. So pretty cool, and just pretty interesting when you see how well technical analysis actually works. Everything from stocks, commodities, ETFs, crypto, Bitcoin, altcoins, meme coins, micro cap coins with like $500,000 market cap. You see so often that they still respect that sort of a thing. So absolutely wild to see. Ethereum right now on the 4 hour, notice that we are technically kind of the same thing as Bitcoin, right? This one's a little messier actually, because we did have some messy consolidation up here where we were technically setting some micro higher lows on the micro time frame here, which we did lose. And we haven't actually broke this downtrend yet, because our most recent low and lower low, lower high. So basically for Ethereum to look good and healthy on the 4 hour again, I really want to reclaim that 45.75 level. I would like to see a break of that. And even if that happens, I wouldn't be too surprised that we would do something like this, break it, and then come back down, retest support, and then carry on higher. Not saying it has to happen, but I really wouldn't be too surprised to see that kind of a thing happen. If we end up losing support like this, I can bring up the Trend Master again. Notice we have the buy signal down here. That is our most recent higher buy signal, higher sell signal, higher buy signal. So this is our pivot point. So that's where I'm basically putting my support. So if we end up dropping this support on Ethereum, then I would be targeting support, basically looking for a fib pulled from 36 or sorry, 33.65 would be the lows of that range. So a fairly significant drop off if we are to get that. I'd be looking at something like this basically. Just make sure that's lined up fairly good. So that fib support would basically be from, again, much because this is the 4 hour, this is actually a very large range here. Obviously, invalidation is far away too. So if you're looking at more swing trades from these levels, you obviously got to use lower leverage than a guy like me uses on the shorter time frames. But I would basically be looking for support to potentially start at about 36.65. And as long as we're above 31.48, that would kind of be my invalidation of this setup. So if I was looking at scaling into this position, I would be looking at something like this with stop loss just below the 115 a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. I kind of hope that we don't even end up pulling that far. I would really like the altcoins to start trending to the upside again, especially if Bitcoin dominance is going to get rejected here. That would be absolutely beautiful to see. And so far it's really trying. Just look at the 4 hour, how well it's respecting it, right? That was a very large pull of a trend line, and how well it respected it for right there from the top side. And as well, when we break below it, how well we're just consolidating right below that old support as new resistance here. So I would love to see this dump off a cliff, because I would love to start longing the shit out of Ethereum and Solana once again. Speaking of that, I got to bring Solana up here because there was some things I wanted to talk to you about Solana, but we'll get into that in a second. Trendmaster, yeah. So a couple of things that I would like to see. One would be just getting above this buy signal again, this pink line here, basically where we're finding resistance right now. I would love to see some candle bodies start closing above that trend again. And that would suggest that the trend is still intact. If we end up flipping this and getting some sort of a sell signal at this point, that's where I'd be starting to target this support down at these levels again. And again, unless we end up invalidating that sign. Like, let's just say we print a sell signal here, for example. If we end up breaking above this resistance, for example, at that point, I would consider that, you know what, we might not be getting all the way back down to those support levels. The downtrend is ending quickly. The bulls are stepping back in. But I mean, there's a lot of what ifs between now and then. So we'll see. 5-minute chart, Ethereum. Just looking for some sort of a setup on the 5-minute. I mean, very similar to what I did on Bitcoin. I would be willing to pull a fib, something like this, just from where our current local bottom is. I'd be looking at pulling a fib, something like this. So basically, if I were looking to play along on something like this, I'm actually going to wait and see if we pull back closer to the swing fail level, just because the risk is a lot tighter if I wait for that rather than entering sooner at the 786. We're going to have to see if we get some sort of a reaction here. I might have to change my mind, but so far, this is kind of the support level that I'd be watching, and support would start around 42.57 and basically invalidated between 41.95. So that's 42.57 down to 41.95. If we drop down below that level, that's again where I just have to start to consider the possibilities that we are going significantly lower. I mean, we still do technically have this little bit of support from this range right beside us, but if we're going to lose the current mini STUBER fib there, I just have a feeling we're going to go significantly lower. So we'll have to see what happens with that. One thing that would change my mind with that, and that could also happen before we get down to that level. But let's just say the price ends up doing something like this. This is, again, very theoretical. But let's say we do something like that. At that point, we would have a low, lower, low, lower high, and it's broken like that. That could be an early warning sign that the bulls are stepping in early once again, right? So basically, if we did something like that, so we don't quite get down to the 786, I would be basically looking at trying to get into a long something like this. And the reasoning for that would be, hey, we broke a lower high, we broke some structure, let's pull a fib, look for that pullback. Notice my eyeball is kind of drawn towards that 886 level at this point. But that's kind of the setup that I'd be looking for if the trend was to break a little bit early, basically. Trend master indicator. Again, we still have this buy signal. We're having a hard time holding it as support. So I really wouldn't be too surprised to see a sell signal come into play here on the MDX trend master. And then again, I really see no reason why that wouldn't push us towards the a retest of the lows, basically where we found support earlier today. Bitcoin, what are we doing here? So working our way towards that 786. Yeah, I do want to just catch up on the chat a little bit. I never did catch up fully, so maybe I missed some of your questions. Don't worry, I am still going to take a look at this. What do you think of the rising wedge back to April 6th? Looks like bottom of wedge is holding for now, false breakdown, and now we go higher only to retest the top of the wedge. April 6th, you say? Let's actually go right out. April 6th. April 6th. Are we talking about Bitcoin? Oh, to be fair, let me go to the other chart, because technically that was the log chart. Let me just remove a bunch of drawings. April 6th, where are we? So somewhere back here. I mean, I would probably go from this one back in March. Hopefully this is the one that you're talking about. Let me know if not. See, when I do rising wedges or anything like that, it really, this is the problem that a lot of people, including myself, have with diagonal trend lines, is everybody draws them differently. So you might be looking at something like this, where you're looking for more of the average touch points, in which case we've already tested it. Oh, sorry, you're probably looking from way, I see what one you're looking for. You're looking for this. This is the one you're looking for. Sorry, that's my bad. I was looking a year in the past. Where does this bottom? That's bottomed at 74. So yeah, at this point, it looks to me like it's almost holding as a swing fail. Yeah, I totally see that line that you're looking at now. I like to be very picky with my trend lines, so I'm actually going to drop it slightly. The fact that this wasn't a third exact touch point, I mean, that is me being very picky. Understand that when I look at diagonal trend lines, I'm very picky about exact touch points. So as it stands right now, it's not perfect because we never had a third perfect touch point before breaking below it. But if anything, that gives more credit to this swing fail, in my opinion. So don't get me wrong. If we take another crack at this and lose this level again and lose that horizontal support, something like that, I don't know if this support's going to hold anymore. That could be a little bit of a warning. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, just as something extra to watch for. I don't know if I'll trade it specifically, for example, but I am open to the idea of looking at diagonal trend lines. So far, it looks like we dropped that and then reclaimed it. So if we can hold that support as support once again from our current little pump here, then things still look pretty good to me. Do I think Bitcoin will come down to 114K or go even further to 111.9? So that would be basically lower into my fibs. That 111.9, that would actually be basically a perfect double bottom. for our current range support. If that happens, it is even possible that that's SSV Raja there. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Yeah, if we drop back to 111.9, it's very possible we actually drop a little bit further towards 109.9. That would actually be an even better long setup in my opinion, because at that point you actually have that liquidity grab. If we were to just test double bottom basically and then bounce, I would still have a gut feeling that we're going to do one of those before taking off. So basically, if we lose the 886, I wouldn't be surprised to see us dip into this pocket a little bit further. Do I think it's going to happen? At this point, I don't know. Just because so far we got a beautiful reaction off that 786 basically perfectly. So at this point, it's already, the move has started. Not to say that we can't drop back down to those levels, but I have no idea if it's actually going to happen or not. Looks like an Adam and Eve bottom on dominance. Perhaps. If there's a bottom on dominance right now, I have a feeling it's going to be short-lived. Like if Bitcoin dominance does climb while Bitcoin ends up, correcting a little bit further, we keep dumping to the downside, Bitcoin dominance climbs. Yeah, that would look bearish for the time being in the market. But I really don't know if it's going to hold. And again, especially with that diagonal trend line, which again, talking about how I'm pretty picky with how accurate my trend lines have to be. I mean, that was mapped out on the weekly, but even the 4-hour tested it so perfectly like this. To see, yeah, I guess we tested slightly above it there, but we're really trying to flip that support into resistance. So if that holds, I mean, I want to see this dump. If this dumps, that would be very good for things like, Ethereum, Solana, the whole altcoin market, basically. Chaos, welcome. Good to see you here, brother. Do I think Bitcoin? Oh, I already answered that. Rocket in the house. Rocket Surgeon, welcome. Good to see you here. Brian K, welcome back, my friend. Good to see you here. Yeah, I can check out Supra for you once again. Yeah, I can take a look at IQ. I actually did already. I don't know if that might have been before this, but I'll take a look at that again. Yeah, Supra. Let's check out Supra. Actually, sorry, before I look at Supra, I do want to take a look at Solana just because I don't have these in place anymore. Just because Solana is another main one that I've been trading recently. Haven't basically for almost a week now, but so this is nice to see. Solana on the 5-minute. Notice that we got a higher trending buy signal here. So as long as Solana can stay basically above this pivot around 181.88, as long as Solana can hold above that, it's actually looking pretty good on the 5-minute for now. Unfortunately, I can't map out a STUBER fib with that. It would have been great if this high would have just went a little bit higher to eclipse this one. That would have been fantastic. But as far as just the indicator goes, it looks like we're starting a new uptrend so far. We don't have the sell signals backing that up at this point. But yeah, that's basically what I'd be looking at. That's just an early warning sign again, right? If, let's say, for example, you were in a short on Solana because, hey, look at this. Oh, all of a sudden we got a lower sell signal, lower buy signal, lower sell signal. Well, it absolutely dumped from there. So now the fact that we got a higher buy signal, if I was still in if I was in a short at all on Solana, I would be looking at taking a good chunk of my profits because of that big warning on the charts. I still think Solana is capable of much higher prices. My reasoning for that is, once again, just like what I talked about in my previous streams, let's take off the trend master. But basically, since Bitcoin broke all-time highs, Ethereum basically tested all-time highs, Solana still has a lot of room to go before it even catches up to retesting macro resistance, right? That macro resistance, just looking from a basic STUBER fib point of view from all-time highs, would basically start at about 250 US dollars there. And this 886 would be about 275. Double top would be between 297, 300 US dollars. And then that swing fail zone is up to about 327 US dollars. So that's just another one of those things where, let's say we do break through all-time highs, but then we end up losing that again. Just like what happened with Bitcoin on, was that Thursday or Wednesday? Maybe it was Wednesday. I can't remember what day it was now. But that same swing fail type of a setup, that's kind of the only opportunity where I'd be looking for shorts in this market at this time, is more so looking for a nice swing fail that you can at least get a nice tight invalidation on, right? Here's a perfect example, right? Just another example of a swing fail is basically we come back up to resistance. We get slightly above it. People start FOMOing into a long on the breakout, and then we end up re-losing that level, and it's a perfect short opportunity. So at this point, maybe it's played out already, right? Who knows? But it was an obvious, easy trade setup, basically, with a tight invalidation. And once again, had you done it properly, like I didn't on Bitcoin last week, having your stop loss be on the 115 and just kind of laddering into this pocket, if anything, that's a nice trade right there as well, right? I never took it. This is just another example of a perfect swing fail setup. And obviously it's already hit the 0.5 fib right here. So maybe it's already played out already. But yeah, that's basically one that I would look for shorting if it were to happen again, kind of at all-time highs on something like Solana, for example. But as it stands, like I was saying, Bitcoin got to all-time highs. Ethereum got very close to all-time highs. I think it was about $100 off. So I see no reason why Solana wouldn't be basically next in line to go and test its macro resistance, right? So I still think Solana can go a lot higher. I guess we'll have to see. The market doesn't give a shit about my opinions or my feelings. But yeah, just looking from a structural point of view, Solana is still a coin of interest for me when looking for those long opportunities. Yeah, like I said, Supra, I will check out Supra real quick for you, Brian. I was actually assuming I meant to bring up that chart because I thought that if you showed up, you would be requesting that. Well, the 5 minute, I already see something that happened. Notice we came down to that 786, 886, basically perfectly, just a little further, and came up already. May have played out, right, because it got to the 0.5 fib, but I know you are looking at longer time frames than that. That just caught my eye. Yeah, I think we were talking about this one in the last stream, but let's look. This is a tricky one because technically right now I would say we're in a bearish STUBER, if anything. If we pull our fibs, something like that, we basically have resistance looking something like that. And my reasoning for this is, however you want to look at it, since we obviously broke this big downtrend, very tightly coiled up wedge there, on the way up here, we set a bunch of microstructure, right? We had, I mean, this would have been the last one where we had our high, higher low. After we broke that, that's the structure break, right? Even though that seems very micro analyzing, those of you guys who have been in my live streams, in my Telegram, etc., you know that I love looking for that kind of structure. And sure as shit, look at that. We end up coming right back up, grabbing that, filling that 786, 886 fib pocket, and then dumping to the downside, right? Beautiful move right there. But yeah, as far as if you wanted to look at that, or you don't like looking at the microstructure, so let's say you want to look at this pivot point, same thing, we got a lower low there. If I wanted to use this pivot point, obviously it got broken over here, and same thing, right? No matter how I look at it, this is my pivot point back here. So that is where I'm still pulling my bearish STUBER fib from. something like that. So one thing to consider is obviously this setup has actually played out once already, right? Because we basically tested the 786 right here, and we did hit the 0.5 fib here. So now that we're testing away at this 786, we're testing away at this resistance pocket repeatedly here. Maybe we do get some strength and break right through. But it's still important to just understand that we are technically more so trading at resistance rather than support at this time. If the whole market ends up correcting much deeper, then I see no reason why we wouldn't end up testing this much bigger STUBER fib pocket support. We could. I have mixed feelings about this. I have this purple one here. I'm going to extend it a little bit. That is basically my macro support fib box right now. Let's do a horizontal level of support as well. And technically on this micro downtrend here, I call it micro, it's the 4 hour, so it is a fairly big downtrend, but basically this would have been our low, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. We end up breaking that. That's where that other fib was. So technically, we may find support somewhere like this if we see a pullback. This is one of those times I have mixed feelings about it because unfortunately, as soon as this setup would get invalidated, we would be at the bigger support, right? So technically this whole range is potential support, and that's obviously a massive range. So I have mixed feelings about that. But if you're, let's say on the 4 hour, you have this type of a level mapped out and you end up trading down into this level, and then you see on the shorter time frame, like a 5 minute, you get a little microstructure break. At that point, that's a little additional confluence. Or same thing with if you have certain indicators that you like to use for spotting a trend shift or anything like that. I would start looking for those around this fib pocket here. But again, it's possible it would go a little bit lower, but we'll see. I will map out that support box as well, just so that it is on my chart in future streams. Get rid of some fibs, clean things up a little bit. Now let's bring up the trend master indicator. Let's look at indicators for confluence. Couple things I notice right now. One, bulls are really trying to hold on and reclaim this buy trend, this pink line here that's climbing to the upside. I'd really like to see the price confidently hold above that and start finding support off that level. One thing that I really like to see is that we have these lower sell signals, right? We had this sell and a lower sell signal, which means where did this one pivot? Right about here would be our resistance there. And even though we're not above that at this point, the fact that we did break that resistance twice at this point, that may just be a bit of a warning sign that, hey, at least we broke some sort of resistance. So even if we pull back a little bit now, I'm hoping to see the bulls reclaim this fairly quickly. So it doesn't look too bad to me at this point. I would only start worrying about, trending towards some of these significantly lower support levels if we actually lose this range. I would even consider looking at something like there is a potential support line there. Again, I know not everyone wants to try to trade diagonal trend lines or anything, but that is something that may end up holding as support. The thing is, with the market the way it is right now, everything's done a fairly good job of building support on the way up. That's actually the nice thing about when we, just break a level and then pull back, consolidate, as annoying as it is when we get this kind of price action, at least we're doing a good job of building support along the way, right? So that's why, for example, the fact that we got this high, pulled back, and then got a higher high, that brought our confirmed higher low so much higher on the trend rather than down here, or before that, even further down here. The fact that we did that with the structure. I mean, we're staircasing higher, right? So even though, yeah, I wish we would go parabolic straight to the moon, at least if we see these corrections, there is some support to hopefully end up holding us as support, right? Much like we did down here. Yeah, Rocket, I had mentioned that I will look at IQ again for you. So like I said, this thing respected my Stuber fib. We ended up finding support right in my purple box here. On the 4 hour, the MDX Trendmaster printed a higher buy signal. We are still basically trying to hold above my purple line here. It's basically at the bottom of the candle currently. So even if we do see a little bit of a pullback, I think that this was a nice sign that since our sell signals and our buy signals started trending to the upside here, I think that's a nice sign that the trend has shifted to the upside. Now, obviously, we have struggled at breaking this range many times already at this point. So hopefully we end up finding some momentum this time. But yeah, I would say that the structure is definitely in favor of the bulls, right? Between the indicators like that, the Trendmaster, I can even bring it up on the daily. Notice we got this buy signal recently, so we have this daily support coming in on under the price as well. So even if we pull back a little bit further, there is possible support there. And as well, I want to turn the indicators back off. Notice that what we've done here is we've set a higher high, right? This was our high, even though it's a wick, right? Same thing, right? That same swing fail situation going on where we lose the wick and then all of a sudden we have a hard time going any higher for a little bit. So whether or not we actually get a full retracement or not, either way, we ended up setting a slightly higher high, right? And that means this would be the lowest point between the two. So if I pull the fib something like this, if we end up retracing, I mean, we basically have the same support. It actually gets brought up very slightly. Basically, our new 886 is where our previous 786 was, and then support's actually stepping in a little bit higher. So far, I love the structure there. Even if I know that would actually be a fairly far correction, right? When you're talking about meme coins and these low cap coins, obviously they're very volatile. That would be damn near a 40% correction to the downside, and a healthy one, in my opinion. So very possible, but hopefully we just find support on our Trendmaster and just the bulls carry us straight to the moon. Let's do it. Go back to Bitcoin here just to watch this. We're getting real close to that fib pocket. Hey, Eugenia, good to see you here. Welcome back. Stu, what would be the chances of Ethereum not touching 3,300 as I wish if Bitcoin doesn't do the same? Keep going up from now to 120K. Even though Bitcoin dominance has dropped, coins keep following BTC. So the thing is, with Bitcoin dominance dropping, understand that when Bitcoin drops, when it has these corrections, so you guys know that for the last month or two, well, actually about 2 months, I've been significantly more bullish on things like Ethereum and Solana than Bitcoin. And that's with Bitcoin doing well, right? But the thing is, if Bitcoin does correct, if something spooks it, if it gets rejected, whatever happens, chances are the rest of the market is going to follow it. It's more so that when the market has corrected enough and the bulls start stepping back in, you're going to see those much more aggressive reactions out of the altcoins, right? Like I pointed out in my Telegram last week that I had actually pointed out at the same time 3 different setups. I pointed out Bitcoin Stuber long, Ethereum Stuber long, and Solana Stuber long. The Bitcoin one, we ended up pumping about 2% off the test, off the 786. Solana pumped 5%, so it was over twice as strong. And then Ethereum pumped 10%, and it actually happened quicker. So they still had the same corrections. They still pulled back to their Fibonacci's, but when they found support, the altcoins were moving much more aggressively. And I think that's largely in part due to the Bitcoin dominance dropping and just more so just the phase of the cycle we're at, right? The fact that after Bitcoin smashes its all-time highs and then Bitcoin dominance starts dropping, that's when you see altcoins actually start to perform well rather than the entire cycle. So they will still usually move together. It's just that I'm more bullish on catching those bounces on the altcoins rather than on Bitcoin as much. Except like right now, for example, right? I had mentioned that I'm in a bit of a Bitcoin long off that 786 where I'm not in a position on Ethereum or Solana. That's mostly just because of how volatile it currently is with this big correction that, I'm willing to trade the safer one at this point. But when things start more obviously trending to the upside again, that's where I'll be more aggressive into Ethereum and Solana again. But yeah, like if Bitcoin ends up, dumping off a cliff and going for significantly lower support, like if I bring up the 4-hour, let's say we're going to drop all the way to the 886 or even to swing fail territory, I really have the feeling that Ethereum would basically do the same thing. Just like if Bitcoin ends up finding support now, I assume Ethereum would do the same thing, but more aggressively, basically. Same with Solana. Hopefully that answered your question. Hopefully I didn't confuse you there. Ryan, my wife had left me after I lost our vacation money on fart coins, so I sold her wheelchair. Now she's coming crawling back to you. Oh boy. Oh boy. Lol. Maz, I will check out Link, my friend. Let's do it. Yeah, I had actually heard that Link was moving quite well too. Hey, Link never really did pull back. It actually just went higher. What is the daily looking like? I want to zoom right out on Link. Is this even the all-time high over here at about $31? Or is there might be an older chart. But either way, that is beautiful. Look at this, guys. This is very interesting. A higher buy signal on the weekly time frame. That is a huge warning about a very large shift to the upside or just strong momentum to the upside, right? Obviously, that can change at any time. But at this time, that looks beautiful. I love to see that. And that was just yesterday's candle, right? This weekly candle closed 23 hours and 42 minutes ago, basically. I think. Hopefully my math is right there. I think so. Or no, 22. Sorry. 24 hours and 22 minutes ago this candle closed. No, wait. Oh boy, I better stop. I'm going to hurt myself with all this mathing. 22 minutes less than 24 hours. That's the one. That's how long ago this closed. Yeah, Link on the weekly, that is some strong momentum. The daily, although this last buy signal was technically lower, we've obviously just devastated this previous sell signal. We've got way above that resistance and holding the buy signal since. So yeah, the daily's looking good. The weekly's looking good. The 4-hour still looking good. If we end up seeing a bit of a correction, and I would be willing to basically chase the price at this point. Well, for one, actually, this looks very similar to the weekly chart on Bitcoin. So this would show up better on lower time frames, obviously. But if we're just looking at the very microstructure on this range here, or on this little trend here, just pulling from where this bottomed here because we had this high. And although it was a swing fail, it was technically set a higher high there. That's our higher low. So I would hope to see the bulls step back in if we end up dropping down to about $24.80 would be the 786, and basically invalidated below $23.88. So again, a fairly big range just because things are so volatile. And that's actually a small range, but it is unfortunately a fairly large percentage. move to the downside if that happens. But yeah, it's nice to see, just like what I was talking about with other coins, is that it's done a great job of building support along the way, right? So even if we ended up dropping this type of support, I would still be looking at just the next range, basically. Just pulling a fib to wherever we end up going from here, and just pulling a fib from basically this $21.33 support level there, just because that's our last previous range consolidation where we absolutely took off from, kind of a thing. But yeah, the micro trend, ideally we hold above $24.25. A liquidity grab below would give us a nice, easy, long opportunity with a tight stop loss to get into, but it would raise the question of, does that count as losing the higher low at that point? So that even though we would maybe get a nice, easy, long opportunity, it might just set a lower high and then get rejected at that point. So at this point, I would love to see us hold above that $24.27 or whatever there. If we end up completely losing that, then yeah, unfortunately, we have to go back to basically where this swing started down here and look for something like that. But it's a little bit early to be doing that. Trendmaster, yeah, still have that buy signal there. Let's go to the 1 hour, zoom in a little bit. Obviously see the same structure there. So really nothing changes there. The 1 hour, we obviously have this. So this is another example, right? So here we had our lower buy signal, lower sell signal, but then when that pivoted, we got our higher buy signal, and then we got another higher buy signal. Both of those were beautiful long opportunities, right? When this indicator starts trending to the upside like that. So it's nice to see that so far we are holding the support of the Trendmaster indicator. But obviously, let's say longing into something new at this point, you're obviously FOMOing in a little bit, but at least there is this structure here. But if it loses, then I see no reason why we wouldn't go back to the support of the previous range, basically pulling a fib from there. But yeah, so far things are like, Link has a beautiful trend on it right now. I'm going to take a look at the 5 minute. 5 minute, I'd be looking at the exact same structure, basically, because we lost the immediate trend, right? We had technically this little pause right here on the trend, and we lost that. We could even make that whole red candle a bit of a box there, and notice we flipped that support where we found support to push higher. When we lost that, we ended up flipping that support into resistance here. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see that push us down to these to the support of this range once again. Habu71 here a little late. All good, brother. You can always catch this a little bit later, and you're here for part of it. So it will still be on the Financial Summit YouTube channel after I'm done. So if you missed anything and you really feel the itch to go back there, it will be there for you. WTF. What the F are the shit coins? Yeah, you know, sometimes I don't mind looking at the odd shit coin. Understand that I have no loyalty to what I trade. Basically, if the volatility is there, I will trade it. And yeah, that's about what it is. So I've, you know, Troll was a perfect example, a huge shit coin, and I hit like a 20x on it a couple weeks ago and made some very good money on that. So, you know, I'm not opposed to trading the odd low cap meme coin, and honestly, just and even investing in, but only I want to be clear about this, guys. I am so much more bullish on Bitcoin. Okay, as far as like an actual investment idea, I am way more bullish on Bitcoin, more of a Bitcoin maxi myself, but I will trade the other things. I will short-term hold them. I understand that there's times of the market cycle where altcoins will outperform Bitcoin, and I think that's kind of where we're at right now. So that's why I've been talking about shit coins and altcoins and meme coins and micro cap coins and that sort of thing. It's only because of where we are at in this market cycle. Any thoughts on BTC hitting 117 and not being able to break through? 117. I mean, yeah, it's possible, right? That would be, well, where's 117? Oh, basically where we've topped so far. Oh, and also the old support here. I mean, yeah, it's possible we can't break it, but I just don't have a trade set up for myself that I'd be looking at shorting it or anything. Like, yeah, I see the possible retest there, which may have already happened, right? But I don't know. It's not a strong level of resistance for me. It's absolutely possible that it ends up holding. I mean, technically, we have this sell signal with resistance kind of coming down towards that level. But yeah, even if we are going to get bearish, I feel like at some point we see more of a bounce. Obviously doesn't have to happen this way, but something that would be very common, even if, so let's say, this is all very theoretical, but let's say we do something like this. At that point, everybody's going to be trying to short the breakout, right? Just like retail generally loves to FOMO into positions. People would love to short into something like that. Although I may not disagree with their theory that, hey, that's a bearish sign. We lost support. It's time to short. Time to short doesn't necessarily mean short right now, right? Yeah, that may be a signal, a sign to look for shorts. But so often, if you get something like that, you're going to see something like this before the actual move. And that would just be basically a STUBER fib setup again, right? Looking at losing structure and then the retest. Now, obviously, breakouts happen. Sometimes you don't always get that retest, but chasing breakouts is a very dangerous game. And more often than not, the crypto space, stocks, every asset ever generally likes to trade sideways and chop around more than breaking out one direction. So those retests happen more often than not, I would say. Hurley, good to see you. Welcome to another one. Doing fantastic. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day as well. We are seeing Bitcoin starting to get into this pocket here. I'm going to start laddering into a little scalp here with invalidation below 115.7. Mm-hmm. No idea if it'll play out or not, but basically doing something like this, looking at laddering into a position, something like this, and then stopped out if we end up losing 115.7. We will see what happens there. And the whole point of laddering into a position like that is, again, like I said at the start of the video, is if that loss happens, at least you're bringing your average entry way closer to your invalidation, just to reduce that risk a little bit, right? If you're ever upset, I mean, obviously it's okay to take things seriously, but if you're actually like upset, devastated that you lost a trade, then you're trading with too much money, you're over leveraging yourself, you don't have proper risk reward. I don't mind if we come down into support, if I can get my average entry closer to this level and we end up getting stopped out, something like that. I mean, basically, this is kind of what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for a tight risk setup where, we can aim for those above 3-to-1 risk reward ratio, right? Trading's not always about winning every single trade, but it's about controlling those losses when they come as well, right? So actually something like this, if we end up retesting the top of the range, we're looking at a 6-to-1 risk reward. So obviously it doesn't have to play out perfectly, but if we hit a couple of our targets, we have no risk on the table at all. And even if we do lose this position, then at least the risk is very small, right? That's really what I like about looking for these setups on shorter time frames as well. Is that so I can use higher leverage? Because obviously, if I was looking for this kind of a setup on a 4 hour, for example, I would need to drastically cut down my leverage. I wouldn't be trading on 50 or 69x leverage on the 4 hour. I'd be looking more at 5x, right? If that, 3 to 5. Dan Rab, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Christopher, good to see you here. Took a bonk short down a bit. Stop loss at 0.02. Let me check out bonk for you. Oh, got the hiccups. Oh yeah, it'll be like bonk. What, bonk 1,000 or 1,000 bonk? I am just going to remove everything because I haven't looked at this in a while. A bonk short stop loss is 0.02. Aren't we above that? Or do you mean a long? Meant long. That makes more sense. Oh, I'm guessing you were looking at this. If I were a betting man, and I definitely am, I would say this is the exact setup you're looking at right now. And that would be because you have this high, higher low. And yeah, notice we came right down, tiny, tiny liquidity grab. We're technically at support. If this is the one you're talking about, then yeah, I assume your stop loss is somewhere down here. One thing to consider with that is, yes, on the micro trend, I absolutely believe I see the exact same setup if that's the one you're looking at. But understand, if that one fails, we still technically have the full range, something like this. So this may also be the one you're talking about, which invalidation's a little further away, obviously. So it's just those setups. I love going for those continuation setups because, you know, if it's trending and you don't necessarily get back to your entries, at least it's a way to get into a tight risk sort of a setup. The thing I don't like about it is that if you're looking for this, you know, micro trend support and invalidations right here, you're right back at the next setup very close. So whatever coin I was looking at that earlier, was it Link or whatever? That's something to consider. But yeah, as far as the micro trend goes, I mean, we're technically at support right now. Trendmaster, don't like to see that. If I were to use Trendmaster Confluence, I would actually be pulling a fib from somewhere around here. Just because this is where he pivoted for our last buy signal here. So it is possible we go a little bit lower, but yeah, as far as the raw structure goes, I would, there's still that other one. That's a bit of a tricky one. Bitcoin so far, respecting my 886 perfectly. So far, my average entry is 116, 100.8. So just below the 886 a little bit. If we hit my first target, so the 0.5 fib, I will remove my other orders and just see what happens with the rest of this position. But if we end up coming down here first, then I'll grab a couple more orders. And guys, for those of you who are interested in trading based on charts and you want to see more examples of my strategies, some of my trade setup ideas, more examples of how I view market structure, and you just want more of my thoughts on the market in general, do yourselves a favor, get in my Telegram by scanning the QR code on the screen or clicking the link in the description down below. The sign up bot should make things as painless as possible to get signed up to Blowfin, which grants free access to my private group. If you already have a Blowfin account, you can contact the Financial Summit team on Telegram for assistance. Their username is on their main YouTube page. And yeah, let's just, what else? Bitcoin trying to gain some momentum here, trying to gain a little bit of momentum. But yeah, guys, like I said in my Telegram, basically just showing more examples of STUBER fibs, right? Pointing out that, hey, I thought even last night thought that it was possible we could go a little bit lower, and just more examples of looking at how I'm looking at this structure, pulling those fibs, laddering in entries, all that sort of good stuff, planning these trades well in advance in a lot of them. Obviously not sharing every single thing that I think of because I'm trading constantly on many different assets and that sort of thing, but lots of these shown well in advance, just kind of showing how I look at the structure, how I pull my fibs, how I trade that strategy and other strategies, etc. But if that's something that interests you, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code, get in there. With that being said, my friends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So hopefully you guys did find this stream useful. If so, please do me a favor. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss these live streams. And as I mentioned, if you want access to the private Telegram where I share some of those theories, trade setups, my overall thoughts in general, there is that scannable QR code on the screen. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Thank you so much for being here with me once again. Really appreciate doing these streams with you guys. It helps me keep a level head. Love doing them. Entertained by doing them. Hopefully you're getting something useful out of this, or at the very least entertained. And with that, I'm out. See you guys on the next one. Peace.